That's kind of like where I'm at with my family, is if something changes, maybe I would. There would be a lot of caution tape around it, because I hit that point where continuing to try and have a relationship harmed me and everybody else in my immediate family. So you, Mason, and our children. And
And that's going to come with a mindful separation, right? It wasn't just one day you're like, I'm out. It was this happened over the course of years, and you finally got to the point where you mindfully went through, can I make this better? Can I survive this any longer? And the answer was, no, I don't feel like I can, so I'm out.
Right.
So consequently, it would take a huge change for you to re-engage. And that's part of that whole mindful process. We're not just in and out. It's we've made some tough decisions along the way, and it would take a big change to.
And this is where you get that cliche statement like death by 1,000 paper cuts, in the sense of, and I'll speak about my father and stuff, is that I got to a place where I got to the radical acceptance place over a decade, probably, before I got to discontinuing conversation. And it was because, you know what, I can go and I'm strong enough and my body is strong enough that I can handle the 5 or 6 paper cuts that I'm going to get while I'm there. I'm going to kind of protect myself to minimize the impact of those. I'm going to have antibiotic ointment or Band-Aids or, whatever the analogy is.
Until he cut one of the children.
Until that shifted to my kids, I kept trying. And so as soon as I recognized the harm is no longer worth the effort, we talk about that risk to benefit ratio, I had to shift. And so I had to learn they are unwilling or unable or both to engage differently. I accept that. My expectation is they're going to continue to do what they've always done. Now what? And what you do after that, once you get to a place where your expectations now meet the reality of what is going on, you redefine your boundaries. Like your brother has posed, I only want a superficial relationship with you. I think it's noble that he wants to have a relationship with you at all, especially since I feel like he's verbalized quite clearly that he doesn't want to have any kind of a relationship with me, which is kind of weird. But not weird that he doesn't want to have a relationship with me, but keeping a relationship with you while continuing to bash your wife, not super helpful. But he has said, I don't want us to stop talking. I just don't want to talk about this. And so once you understand those expectational shifts, once you've hit that radical acceptance place, you now have the ability to be more curious and creative in finding ways that you might be able to engage that are less hurtful and definitely reducing harm and anguish.
Yeah. I don't know that I really have anything to say to that. I'm just thinking that.
Did I render you speechless?
No.
Just thinking.
Well, as you were going through that, I was just thinking, I was formulating responses in my head to my brother, because the last text that he sent, I haven't responded to at all.
Have you even read it all the way? I mean, have you finally read it all the way?
I haven't read it all the way either.
Yeah, you got just the first 2 lines and then you were like, yeah, I'm done.
I read a little bit more of it today when I was preparing for this, but I didn't finish it. But I can look back. This is where the self-reflection falls in too. I can look back at these texts and realize that I didn't accomplish what I was trying to accomplish either.
Right.
And
you contributed to some of the mess.
Absolutely. I contributed to some of the mess. I wanted another effort to try and alter the way that he sees how he responds to me. And I don't know that I was wrong in that, but I certainly didn't accomplish what I was trying to accomplish. And I have been unwilling to engage since then. But talking about what you just talked about just brought to mind that I could engage again and say something along the lines of, you know what, I'm sorry. It seems like you were right at the beginning that we're not able to talk about these things. And I do still want to have a relationship with you. So maybe we do just need to go to a surface level conversation. I didn't see that in the beginning. I was hopeful we could do more than that. It appears like we can't. And maybe even set a couple standards, like I'm willing to do that as long as you don't bash my wife or that kind of a thing. Or maybe not even do that and just address it when it comes later or something. But
you and I can talk about that off the air.
Right. Well, and it didn't really occur to me that I could still backtrack and say, this didn't work the way I wanted it to. I'm willing to just back up and just have that surface level conversation.
Well, and I think that one of the challenges is that it's normal human nature to want to have a conversation to win, like to be right and wrong, righteous, evil, like that black and white, win, lose. In fact, one of the comments from a member of the ward where you were bishop in got really toxic on that same thread. And at the end, you were like, look, I'm done talking. He's like, that's because I win. And you're like, what the flip?
Yeah.
I said flip instead of the other word. No bleep needed.
Good for you. See, growth even for you.
Oh, fuck that. Okay, so anyway. But I think part of radical acceptance is also accepting where you have, like taking that accountability and recognizing, hey, these are my limitations. Do I need to shift my expectations for myself and redefine and realign my own boundaries because what I'm expecting of me isn't healthy either? And I think that self-reflective radical acceptance and expectation shifting is a whole lot harder than it is for other people. Like, it's a lot easier to be like, oh, they can't do any better, I'm over it, and moving on. Although that's disengaged radical acceptance-ish. That's not what we're going for. We're going for a mindful acceptance of the reality without judgment. But accepting the shortcomings in ourselves and learning how to shift expectations for what we can do or what we are willing to do. Because one of the things that I see in you, Mason, is that when you get these types of things, it consumes you. Like, you spend hours trying to respond and word it just right, and it doesn't seem to matter how you word it. It's a bomb waiting to go off. It's just trauma-inducing. And I'm going to say trauma-inducing for both of you, for you and for your brother. And I know it triggers the crap out of me because it makes you grumpy, understandably so. And then our kids begin to get affected by that. That's like that layering on, as the author of this, as let me find her name again, Dr. Maidenberg says in here, the question is whether we're layering on the pain and further intensifying and exacerbating what already exists. And so you've got to be able to identify when your expectations are not going to be able to be met, and that by continuing to push against that, to continue to push into that, is actually going to increase harm, increase trauma, increase stress without healthy resolution. So engage in those negative emotions when you're finding that the outcome is productive. If you find that you can't do that, if you find, it doesn't matter what the negative emotion is, it's never productive, so I'm going to disengage, get professional help. But in yourself, engage in the negative emotions where there's productivity and the outcome is shifting. I'm not saying the outcome is what you want, but that you're seeing consistent improvement and less harm, then you're on the right track.
Right.
And when you've given what you can, you also have to have the emotional maturity, or strive for the emotional maturity to recognize when it's time to accept the things you cannot change without judgment, shift, and realign your boundaries. radical acceptance is letting go of the need to control, judge, and wish things were different than they are.